Hi everybody, Dana here again with more Tuesday tips for leaders of volunteers. And this week talking about a very essential tool for any agency working with volunteers to have, and that is a volunteer handbook. And I am always surprised at conversations online and even with clients that organizations very often don't have a volunteer handbook, and it's a pretty easy thing to put together. There's a lot of templates available, and I'll share some in the video description below. And you can also always reach me at my email, dana@danalitwin.com, to get some examples of ones that I have helped write and create over the years. So a volunteer handbook is a great tool, of course, for the volunteers, but also for internal, any other team members, paid, contractors, vendors, and even for the public to better understand how your organization values and works with and utilizes volunteers' time and talent. I've helped write or completely written on my own volunteer handbooks that are 10 pages and some that are over 100 pages. So how long it is a common question that I get when I'm helping create these materials for agencies, and it really is up to you. It's decided on a case-by-case basis. If you're doing the kind of work that you think you can summarize all the volunteer roles and code of conduct and welcome letter and a couple other essential things into 10 or 15 pages, that's great. If you have more complex work and a larger variety of volunteer roles, then maybe you might be pushing 50 pages or even up to 100 pages if things get really technical. But we want to create a document that people can use on their learning journey, learning the role, learning the job, learning their place within the agency, and how that contributes. I love volunteer handbooks when they are also shared with the public. So I usually encourage clients, if at all possible, unless they're doing highly confidential work, I really encourage them to share the volunteer handbook as a PDF document online on their website right alongside volunteer roles. And that way people who are deciding if this is the right place for them and the best fit, the most fulfilling role for each party, then they can kind of look through the manual and see what's expected of them as volunteers in each role, and also what is expected of the agency, how the agency supports volunteer work. Some crucial pieces to have in a handbook that I always recommend: a welcoming letter from Director of Volunteer Services and or the Executive Director of the agency, so people kind of know that leadership is involved and values volunteers. Hopefully that is true in your agency. And then going into, of course, a table of contents, if it's one of those longer documents, is always helpful. And for sure, job descriptions, roles and responsibilities, what training requirements might be, and this can also be used as a foundational tool, again, during that learning journey and a volunteer being on the job and kind of, checking, I did this part, I understand this part of the role, especially if it's a tiered role where they're kind of building different skills and moving up to different roles and responsibilities with the agency. It's also important to include a code of conduct or values or anti-harassment at the very minimum, an HR requirement, and these should be pretty much the same for volunteers as for staff. That's just kind of an equity issue and should be clearly laid out, along with what consequences or accountability looks like with the agency if any of these codes of conduct or behavioral guidelines or rules or regulations are broken or violated by a volunteer in their work. And that can be an example like a warning letter and then a suspension, or something very, very bad happens means that someone gets fired. But as long as that's clear to everybody involved, that really helps that sense of fairness in the process, and things don't feel personal or arbitrary if you have to, correct a behavior or dismiss someone or promote someone down the line. The other piece of a volunteer handbook that I think is essential is anything that has to do with frequently asked questions. And again, this is going to vary from industry to industry and subsector to subsector, but having, the top 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 frequently asked questions actually saves your time quite a bit as a leader of volunteers. So again, using the volunteer handbook as a foundational teaching material, teaching content. You might even have within your volunteer management software a way to host it internally journey for the volunteers and to kind of go through a learning journey checklist of, I understand this section, I read about my role, and they can initial it electronically or do an in-person training and check it off a list. That's just really good practice to make sure that everybody is on the same page with how things work volunteering with your agency. Volunteer Handbook is also an excellent tool for other team members, especially paid employees or vendors or contractors that you're working with, to also understand the ins and outs and rules and regulations and the processes of the volunteer program. These days, technology being what it is, again, your volunteer management software system or VMS might be able to host a PDF that has links in it to learning videos, if those videos aren't already on your internal servers or on your website for volunteers or in a volunteer portal. The Volunteer Handbook's a great place to kind of embed how the volunteer management software works from the perspective of a volunteer. If you're creating a portal with one of the VMS companies that's capable of doing that, then that kind of helps. So anything someone needs to learn or know about the agency is great to put in the handbook. I've also often included history of the agency if it's important or it's tied to local history somehow. That can be interesting. And also like how value and recognition works. So hopefully you've learned from my other videos to value and recognize volunteers all the time and not necessarily just in one big party. But if you have something like a seasonal calendar of events or celebrations or volunteer appreciation or however the work kind of flows throughout the year, it's also helpful to add a type of calendar so people understand that there might be a season to the roles and tasks that they're doing with your agency. So I'll link to a couple of other videos, including volunteer job descriptions that I did a little while ago, and whatever YouTube thinks is the best video for my channel for you to watch next. I hope you enjoy these Tuesday tips. Please like, be a subscriber if you're not yet, join the Cool Kids Club, and hit the little bell to be alerted when I upload brand new videos just about every week. See you next time.